Hello, everyone. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. The additional noise is my nephews and nieces running around. And welcome to the Acolyte analysis presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. Now we're into episode 3 called Destiny. And I'll tell you, folks, I love this episode. And also, it's a deeply troubling episode. I don't mean that it's troubling in terms of how good it is, because it is very good. It's troubling, and it's meant to be, because what it presents are a lot of moral and ethical questions. Now, I'm not going to get too lost in a diatribe, so I'm going to try to keep this as brief as I can, but let me cut right to the chase. The big question at the heart of this episode: who was in the wrong? Whose fault is this? This episode is the filling in the story that we had heard about in episodes 1 and 2 about what happened on May and Osha's home planet of Rendok. And I thought it was very interesting that instead of making us wait till the end of the series to find out what happened here, they immediately gave us at least one perspective on the story. And the reason I say that is because this might be like The Last Jedi, where there are multiple versions of what happened, depending on point of view. So we'll get to that in a minute. So who's at fault here? Who is in the wrong? Well, I don't think that the four Jedi, Indara, Sol, Corbin, and Kalnaka, I don't think they are the ones at fault. I think the fault lies in the government. Master Indara talks about the Republic law says X. We don't know what those laws say, but it would seem to suggest that the laws are that force-sensitive groups like the Coven on Rendok shouldn't be training kids in the ways of the Force. That's what I think the laws say. Now, why would those laws exist? 1,000 years before the movies, the Sith were defeated. The Republic and the Jedi defeated the Sith empires. Now, the Jedi didn't realize that the rule of two meant that the Sith were continuing in secret. However, I have a feeling that the Republic and the Jedi Order were concerned that other groups, that the Sith might return, or that other dark side groups would rise up. And as a result, they probably passed legislation saying that force-sensitive kids could not be trained by other groups because they feared that those other groups would be teaching dark side things to the kids. Mother Anastasia, who I must say, a great new character. says that their people, their coven, have been persecuted because some people think that they use their powers for darkness, for evil. This is very much like the Night Sisters of Dathomir that we see in the Clone Wars. Their magics are considered dark. And I think in the case of this coven, in the Acolyte, they're in hiding or trying to stay hidden because the galaxy has persecuted them. And I wonder if the reason they were persecuted is because the Sith empires were probably not great places to live in. And maybe the people of the Republic were afraid of having other dark side groups step on them. And so any group, like the Coven, like these witches, some of the people in the Republic saw them as a threat. That's probably why this particular group is in exile and is apparently they moved to Brendok not that long ago. Or not that long before this. So basically, why are they feared? I think it's because the people of the galaxy feared dark side groups because they had seen what the Sith had done. And that's why I think the Jedi had those laws. Basically, that like kids shouldn't be trained by non-authorized groups because it's all motivated by fear. Which is very interesting because the whole episode is about fear. Mother Anastasia says, don't make a decision out of fear. And there's a lot of that here. So I do not believe that the 4 Jedi here are in the wrong. I think what's in the wrong are the laws of the Jedi Order and the Republic. So, but we'll see. But that's how I feel. Now, Mother Anastasia points out that Brendok is not in the Republic. I'm assuming that that's true. I'm going to assume that she's correct. And if so, it looks like the Jedi Order are maybe overstepping their bounds. But yet again, whatever these laws say seem to be rather strict in this regard. Now, the idea of fear. The Coven fears the Jedi. The Jedi fear the Coven. Some more than others. Osha fears the Ascension. May fears losing her sister. There's a lot of fear here. Another issue that really stood out to me is the difference in these characters. We first meet the girls, May and Osha. They got a thing called the Ascension coming up. Osha doesn't want to do it. But May is very insistent about that. Then we meet Mother Coral. Now, Mother Coral, I think, is a character I don't like. And what I mean by that is, I think that the performance and the character And I love the character as a character in terms of artistically, but I don't like the character as a character. Sorry, I'm getting a little rambly. I like the character, but within the story, I don't like Mother Coral's attitude. And I think that that's part of the story is Coral is very strict, very kind of grumpy, very dogmatic, I would argue. And I liked that because just as we've seen that the Jedi are all very different from one another, it's nice to see that the witches do not agree on everything. In fact, they disagree a lot. Anastasia and Carl, the twins' mothers, Anastasia and Carl disagree with each other all the time. Carl is very much, and she says it to the girls, she says, the rules are here for your safety. Now, one of the interesting things about this episode is how it deals with the age-old Star Wars question of a certain point of view. Carl is right. The rules do exist for the girl's safety. However, the idea that the rules exist for your safety is often used to justify dogma. It's often used to justify, we have this rule because it's meant to keep you safe. Which may be true, but those rules can often be bad. But I think it's interesting that she says that. Because I think that's the key to Carl's character. That is very much what Carl is about. Is we do things in just such a way and no deviation. Because any deviation is not safe. Mother Anastasia is a little bit more open. I also like that their parenting styles are completely different. Coral is like grouching and grunting at the girls. No, you can't do this. You have to do this. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anastasia is more like, hey, whatever. And Coral says, you're way too lenient on the girls. You're way too indulgent. Which also is going to be important. Because when Anastasia decides to let Osha go, I think Coral is like, you're being way too indulgent of her letting her make this decision. And we'll get to that in a minute. I like that Anastasia and Coral do not get along, do not agree on the children, and I also think it's very funny, as parents often are, that apparently discipline is a bit inconsistent among these witches. It's funny that Anastasia says, my sweet girls deserve sweet treats. Well, if you watch the way that the girls interact with each other, sweet is hardly the word I would choose. And we certainly see this in real life where, some kids are kind of awful, but one of the parents just thinks they're angels, we've seen that. And then we've seen the opposite. We've seen with like Coral, we've seen parents who are very strict. parents who say to the other parent, "Why are you so indulgent of them?" And I like that. I like that we have that contrast here. Now, then we get a really interesting wrinkle. The twins were created with the fourth. The twins were conceived through the force without a father, without the usual, sperm egg thing, but by the power of the force. Interesting. Now, I believe it's Carl who says that if the Jedi find out how the twins were created, she doesn't say what she fears, but I wonder what motivates that idea. That the Jedi would be unhappy if they were to learn such a situation. Well, let's cast our minds back to Revenge of the Sith. Palpatine says to Anakin, Darth Plagueis was a Sith so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. So, and also as Palpatine points out, the dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities, some considered to be unnatural. So, as far as we know, I think, the ability to create life out of nothing, by using the Force to create life, is a no-no to the Jedi. It sounds like it's something that the Jedi do not like. The idea of people using the Force to do that. Because it violates the natural law. I think that's how the Jedi feel, at least. But that's an interesting little wrinkle. Or not a wrinkle, but an interesting little revelation that the twins were conceived by the power of the Force. Now, I find it very interesting that Master Endora says, Master Endora says, where is their father? Now, I find that to be an interesting question because Qui-Gon Jinn asked a similar question to Shmi Skywalker. Why did they ask this question? The honest truth is, I don't know. I don't know why they asked this question. So I'm not really sure what the purpose behind it is. But it seems to be an important question to the Jedi. I wonder if it's, pardon me, I wonder if it's a question of do they have a force sensitive parent, or Are they looking for the chosen one? So the prophecy of the chosen one says that they will be born without a father. I wonder if the Jedi were asking because they wondered, could these be the ones? I don't think that's the answer, but that's a theory I have, that they're looking for the chosen one. Maybe. I think it's more likely that they ask because they want to know, is one or both parents force sensitive? Because that could pass to their child. Now, the reaction is interesting. Endora says, where's their father? The witches respond, they don't have one. There's a look on Master Soul's face that's very interesting. And we don't see a reaction from the other three Jedi. But Soul's reaction makes me wonder what he was thinking. Was he shocked at the idea that the dark side may have been used to create life? Or, like Qui-Gon Jinn, did Master Soul go, oh my gosh, they could be the chosen one? I wonder, and we don't know what was in that look, but I wonder what he was thinking. He was either shocked by the idea of unnaturally creating life, or the possibility that the girls are the chosen one. What do you think? I'd love to know your thoughts. But regardless, I don't think that the witches know. Well, as far as I understand it, I think the suggestion is that the ability to create life with the Force is not something that the Jedi like. It's something that dark side people do. Now, I don't think the witches had the same idea about light, and dark, about light and dark as the Jedi do. So the question is, well, not the question, but they don't seem to think it's wrong. Now, is it wrong? Is it an evil power? I have no idea. The only thing that we know is that Darth Plagueis had that power, at least according to Palpatine. And as far as how did the Jedi feel about that remains to be seen. Now, there's so much to talk about on this episode. So let me just cover a couple more topics. If you're looking for a more in-depth breakdown of this episode, go check out Force Center, and other podcasts. Because I can only give you my own thoughts. Another one is about choice. Choice. From the beginning, we see Osha says, I don't want to do the ascension. I don't want to be a witch. Nay is very disappointed in her sister, saying, of course you do. Before we get to choice, let's talk about attachment. Nay seems very attached to Osha in the sense of wanting to be almost one and the same with her sister. She's the one who talks about that rhyme. You know, that I am with you and you with me. I forget how it goes, but I give you you and you give me me. Whatever that is. May seems very focused on that. And May does not like the fact that Osha wants her own things. Osha wants to have her own life, to do her own things away from her sister. And May has a hard time accepting that Osha would not want to be one and the same with her. Osha's got her drawing notebook. Osha doesn't want to be a witch. A bunch of other things where Osha's like, I want to just be me. I imagine it's very hard for twins. Because we as a culture think of twins as a double bill. We always seem to talk about them in the same sentences. They're always like joined together in everything. So it must be terribly frustrating when a twin says, I want my own life. So Osha doesn't want to do the things Nay is doing. And Nay is upset about it. Yoda in Revenge of the Sith talks about how attachment can lead to greed and possession. Star Wars has always told us that attachment is good. Luke Skywalker saved the galaxy by his emotional attachment to his father. On the other hand, Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader because his attachment to Padme became possession, became greed, became toxically codependent, and not willing to let her go if it came to that. Star Wars has always walked the tightrope of attachment is good when it is selfless and compassionate. Attachment is bad when it becomes codependent or possessive. Nay's connection with Osha is Nay feels very possessive of her sister. Osha clearly cares about and loves her sister as much as they might bicker and argue. Osha, though, seems more willing to let go of those things. Nay is very possessive and clingy. And like, I share everything with you. Of course you want to do the ascension. I'm not going to let you leave. It's very possessive. Now, obviously, they're kids, so their judgment is, maybe a little immature, but even adults can make those mistakes. May seems already rather dark. Even as a kid, she's very, telling May, I'll kill you rather than let you leave. That's dark. So there seems to be a darkness already growing in May, which might be why the Sith guy recruits her. Maybe because of that darkness. Anyhow, so that's the thing about attachment. Osha was willing to let go, but May was not. The contrast here, which is a reflection also. Mother Coral doesn't want to let go, but Mother Anastasia does. Mother Anastasia is willing to respect. Eventually, she eventually comes to respect the fact that this is Osha's decision. And Mother Anastasia, very much like Shmi Skywalker, says the choice is yours. I may not like it, but if that's what you want, if that's what you need, then I'm with you, and I'll agree. Coral is very much like, no. Coral seems a bit more like, you will do it. You will do what we say. You're young, and we know what's better. That thing. And that's also a balancing act. I'm not a parent, but it is I do know that being a parent can be very tricky because how do you draw a line between respecting your child's agency and insisting on laying down the rules? How do you decide? And I don't think there is an answer. At what things that a child can make their own decisions about, and what things that you have to make the decisions because you're the adult. There isn't an answer. It's a great conundrum. And I love that this episode plays with that. So Osha doesn't want to be a witch. But May and Coral and even Mother Anastasia are telling her, of course you do. But eventually her choice comes into the story. When the Jedi present themselves and meet the twins, Osha very enthusiastically wants to take the Jedi test. May doesn't. And initially the reaction from the mothers is pretty much no, no, no. Including Mother Coral saying, let's murder the Jedi. Mother Coral is very violent. Is very militant. She's like, let's kill the Jedi. No one will miss them. It's kind of twisted if you ask me. One of the other mothers says, one drop of Jedi blood and they slaughter us. And they kill us all. I think that that's probably not true. I think that's a sense of paranoia. As I said earlier, about not making decisions based on fear. I think that that's an example of someone acting out of fear. Mother Coral, same thing. Acting out of fear. So they agreed to let the girls take the test. Master Soul seems very insistent that both girls be tested. Now, what I like about Soul in this episode is where Indora is very stiff, Soul makes an effort to connect with the girls. Indora and her Padawan Torben seem very distant. Hilnaka and Soul seem more friendly. And Soul makes an effort to reach out and actually make a connection with Ocean. He shows her his lightsaber. He talks to her gently and kindly. He makes an effort to connect. And also, as he points out, it's your choice, and it's also if the witches are okay with it. Now, Indora is rather funny because she's a little bit more like, we're going to train them, or we're going to test them. And then she adds on the end, oh, with your permission, of course. Almost as though Indora doesn't really mean it. It's like, she's like, well, it'll be up to you. You can decide whether or not OSHA can go. OSHA and they can be tested and be trained, but Indora seems rather reluctantly to say, only if you want to. Meaning that I don't think Indora is really giving them a choice. It's just based on the way she says it. Soul is a little bit more compassionate. And if that's what you want, and if the mothers say yes, Soul is a bit more like, it's about choice. And so I think that Soul and Mother Anasira are very similar. Now, it takes Mother Anasira a little bit to get there. But eventually she says, it's up to you, Ocean. And Soul says the same thing. Indara seems similar to Mother Coral in being a little bit more on the dogmatic, you will do this side. I like that. No. When it comes to choice, it's interesting to me, I think, that when when Osha tells Mother Anasara, I don't want to be a witch. I don't want to do the ascension. Anasara says, Well, you don't want it because you're a child, but eventually you'll understand. Later, when Osha says, I want to be a Jedi, Anna Cyrus says, well, what you want will change as you grow up. Which is true. She says, you think you want to be a Jedi now, but that might change. Now, that ends up being true. However, I do find it interesting that Mother Anna Cyrus is a little bit. No, don't get me wrong. I think Anna Cyrus is a great character. But I think that in this particular case, she's being a bit of a hypocrite. We are all guilty of being hypocrites at one time or another. Because what she is basically saying is, well, you're too young. Well, saying that, oh, well, you don't want to do the ascension because you're a child and you don't know what you're talking about. Almost as if to say, of course you want to do the ascension. Basically saying that, well, you're a child. You want to get the ascension. You just don't understand because you're young. But then later, when Osha says, I want to be a Jedi, she says, well, you may want to be a Jedi now, but that will change. And the reason I find that very interesting is that Mother Anna Cyrus, like a lot of the other mothers, are pressuring Osha to be in the ascension when that's not what Osha wants. And yet they say, well, you don't really want to be a Jedi. You really want to do the ascension and become a witch. Even though repeatedly she says, I don't want that. I think that one of the things about this episode is about choice, but also about, this is something we wrestled with for thousands of years. Is a child ready to make those kind of decisions? Huge decisions. Doing the ascension is a big deal because it's a life commitment to be one of the witches. Choosing to be a Jedi is a big deal because that's a life commitment. So the balance between when are kids old enough to make those decisions? When are they not old enough? Or should those decisions even be put before them? And the answer is, I don't know. And I like the fact that there is some ambiguity here about, can a child really make these decisions? And on the flip side, should other people be making these decisions? I would say sometimes yes and sometimes no. And I like that that's part of this episode. The final thing is, that I'll say, I don't think we've seen everything yet. There is some parts of this missing. And what I mean by missing is there's a perspective here that we have not seen. We saw what we saw, but there may be missing parts that we will see later. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. My good friend Eleanor Mueller pointed out that at the end of the episode, when Osha wakes up, you can see that Torben has a scar on his face. Earlier in the episode, Torben did not have a scar on his face. But in the shot in the ship, as they're headed to Coruscant, you see that he has a scar. Also, did you notice that Soul was in the witch's compound at just the right time to help Osha? Almost like he had been there for a little while. And the other question is, what killed the mothers? Did May's fire do that? Or was there a fight that we did not see? If there was a fight, yes. Who started it? And what were they fighting over? I have a couple of theories, but I'm not willing to commit to them. Because one of the things I love about this show, is it's unpredictable. It has subverted my expectations so many times that it is insane. So I'm not willing to commit to anything. But I think there was a fight or a conflict that we did not see. And I don't know what happened in that fight. Did the Night Sisters did the witches fight each other? Did the Jedi fight each other over something? Did Mother Coral attack the Jedi and they responded? Who started it? Who started it and what were they fighting about? I think that we're going to see that at some point. Probably not next week, that's my theory. But later in the season, we will. And then we'll be able to make more judgment calls. I'm not willing to blame anybody or put judgment on anyone except the dumb republic laws, except the laws and the legislation. But I'm not willing to blame anyone here until we see the full picture. And then, once they filled in the blanks, then I can make a judgment call. Then I can make a judgment. But until that time, I don't know what happened. So, the last thing I want to say is it's very easy to look at this episode and say, Jedi bad. Jedi bad, witch is good. That, I think, is oversimplification. And the reason I say that is, in a very good scene, May says, the Jedi are bad. Osha says the Jedi are good. Anastasia says, this isn't about good or bad. He says, this isn't about good or bad. It's about power. And who. It's about power and who has the right to wield it. I think that's the thesis statement. It's not about are the Jedi bad or the Jedi good. No, it's about power. And what I was saying about the Republic laws, apparently the laws of the Galactic Republic have given the Jedi the power to go and bother force sensitive communities. The law has given them the power to basically show up and say, we don't like that you're the ones teaching these kids. Like I said, I think it's motivated by fear, which is another thesis. The Jedi, in this case, had been given too much power. And that's really at the heart of this episode. It's not about Jedi good, Jedi bad. It's about they have too much power. And power that comes from the Republic and the Jedi making laws, making legislation that gives them more power than they should have. Power and fear are the two big themes of this episode. Anyhow, folks, that brings us to the end of a very complicated and morally ambiguous episode. I can't wait to see what we are missing. The part of the story that we don't have. I'm interested to see. And are there other forces at work here? Are the Sith secretly pulling the strings? I don't know, but boy, does this episode give me a lot of food for thought. And I thought it was so very brilliant. Such a good episode. Very well written, acted, and directed. It looks amazing, by the way. Also, notice the sun and the moon. Or the two suns. I'm not sure what they are. Amazing designs here. And Mother Anastasia might be one of the great new characters in Star Wars. And I have to give a shout out to my friend Becca Benjamin, who likes to use the term Nero, combining hero and Shmi Skywalker, the mom type, the good moms of Star Wars. Or often the unsung heroes. Hera, Anastasia, Shmi, Lyra Urso. So many others that are willing to do whatever it takes for their kids and be a true hero, even if they don't get a lot of praise for it. Mother Anastasia is a new addition to the great heroes of Star Wars. Well, folks, those are my thoughts on this episode. Destiny, what a ride this is. And I just don't even know if I could fully express all the thoughts I have. But I hope that what I said makes sense. And I hope that you like what I've had to say. It's a very controversial episode in that I don't think the fans are going to agree here on the morality of this episode. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. I've given you some of mine. And mind you, other people, particularly parents, would have a different reaction to this than I would because of their life experience. But those are my thoughts. And thank you for listening. Please give a like and subscribe. And come and join me for more fun. My name is Brennan Marr. That noise you're hearing is my ventilator. And the other kids. Thank you for tuning in to the Acolyte analysis, presented by Page Turners They Were Not, my Star Wars podcast. May the Force be with you.